Hey everyone, Marc Sabatella from the Mastering MuseScore School here, and I'm going to turn this down a wee bit. So, obviously, I have my sound working. It got working, of course, right after the cafe yesterday, so apologize for the sound then. So great to see everyone checking in here and see people getting ready to participate in some music making. So this is the music masterclass where we just talk about making music and whatever we want to talk about, basically. I usually have some things on my mind to talk about, and I'll do that, and I'll look at some of your submissions that you've made. And for people who were here last week, you know that we're working on what I'm calling the Spring Challenge, and it's not a competition or anything. It's just a challenge to go out and write some songs about spring because there's not enough of them in the world. Actually, that's one of the things about spring songs is there are so many of them that, as I mentioned last week, a lot of the songs about spring are really meta songs about spring. It's like kind of making a joke about the whole idea that there's songs about spring, too many of them, or that it's not spring and it feels like spring, or it is spring and it doesn't feel like spring, and all these references to spring. And anyhow, there's always room for more, is what I say. So that spring's on my brain, and it's a beautiful spring day here in Colorado right now. And so I'll talk some about that. And I see a couple people have some pieces they've managed to get in, and I expect that maybe over the next few weeks we'll just keep talking about spring songs, and that's really where I want to kind of focus. And we'll skip around a little bit. I'll look at other random things and so forth. So, oh yes, so for people who are outside the United States, you may or may not be aware. I don't know how worldwide the April Fool's phenomenon is. But it's a thing where I do something like say, "Oh, I'm really sorry, but I broke my leg today, and so I'm not able to do this." And you're like, "Oh no, you broke," and I'm like, "Ah, April Fool's." I don't know. It's like you tell a lie and it's a joke. That's my summary of April Fool's Day for people who aren't familiar with the culture. Usually, you're playing a trick on someone and then you fool them. Is the idea. So yeah, that's what's going on today, and it is. I want to say before I, since I'm thinking of it right now, most of you, hopefully are on my mailing list and already saw a notification. I'm running a sale on my courses, so go to my website, and it is no joke, 25% off everything. Just use the coupon code anniversary. So there, already did my commercial announcement for the day. So let me just put the link in there so that you all know. Mastering. I need to make this a shorter thing to type is what I need to do. But masteringmusescore.com, and then I pin that to the top. So if you go there and you enter when you sign up for a course the coupon code anniversary, you get 25% off. So that's what's going on this week also. And it's in celebration of the fact that it's the 1 year, and it's not random that I'm doing this. It's the 1 year anniversary of me launching the basic music theory course, which was the first step in the journey to this existing. The whole reason the music masterclass exists is I wanted to expand beyond just teaching about MuseScore to starting to teach about music. So I put out the basic music theory course, and then my harmony course, and then I wanted to do something like this also. So that's kind of the story there. All right. So the basic music theory course is really just the nuts and bolts of, okay, here's what a chord is, here's what scales are. The harmony course is more about here's how we actually use it, and I'm working on a counterpoint course, blah, blah, blah. So, yeah, there's a lot of things that I have on my mind today, and I'm also always interested to see your questions about uh, whatever comes up from this. But since I said I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my favorite spring songs and what maybe is going on with them musically. So first of all, as you probably know, my background, I have, feet in a lot of worlds, classical music, jazz, and last week we saw this pop song I wrote, and I sort of put it out there that maybe we would explore that genre a little bit. So the thing is, I don't actually know, like if I think of pop song meaning like popular music, say, of the last 50 years, I actually don't know any spring songs in that genre. If someone mentions one, maybe I'll go, oh, yeah, I do. But I can't think of any. When I did a search, though, on MuseScore.com for songs about spring, let me show you what actually came up is... what came up is this, Spring Day by BTS. I've heard of them. It's a Korean pop group, right? So anyhow, this song, I don't know it, but there's a whole lot of covers of it here on MuseScore.com. So it must be a popular song, and I'm going to assume those lyrics that actually are about, I'll assume that these lyrics actually are about spring, but I don't know what they're about. So this song sounds like, yeah, it's the kind of pop kind of song that I would be interested in hearing people's versions of. And harmonically, so I'm just going to kind of skip around and just take a quick look at some songs. If I look at this harmonically, first thing you can tell is it's totally diatonic. You can tell that by hearing it if you're listening, or by looking at the sheet music and seeing there's no accidental, right? So it's very diatonic. So all chords within the key. It was a 1 chord, a 3 to 6. So we have 1, 3, 6, 4, back to 1. And again 3, and 6, and 4, back to 1. And that progression kind of carries throughout that section of the song. Then I see another section here. Same chord progression though, just a different texture. So this is a song that seems like it's popular, and I just don't know this world. So it's based on this idea of a repeating chord progression over and over again. Well, that is a thing. This is absolutely a thing. And it's especially a thing, I don't know, maybe the last 20 years of pop music. I'm kind of out of touch with it. I know the 70s and the 80s music and the 60s to some extent. After that, it's kind of a blur for me. But this idea that you can build these songs up out of textures, out of these repeating chord progressions that are fairly short like this, but layer things up, and it being about the production value of the recording, that's definitely a thing. And it's something that allows you to build a song out of relatively small amount of material. Um, so, so yeah, I see a question about naming the video, and yes, once it's over, I put the date on it and a thing, because while it's live, you can't. It's sort of weird the way it works, but I will stick the date on it when it's done, so not to worry. So it's already the second for you, Rod. Yeah, that's true. Good point. Yeah, that's crazy. So yeah, this is a song where harmonically that's what's going on. What's interesting about it is rhythmically, and this is something that if you're not used to working in this genre, maybe you don't see every day. I was working with some students yesterday, and they were trying to decipher rhythms like this. Bum ba dun da dun dun da dun da dun dun da dun da dun da da dun da da dun. There are all these combinations, syncopated combinations of sixteenths and eighths. One observation I'm going to make about this arrangement is it's not really notated correctly, right? You shouldn't really beam together two full beats. Bum ba dum ba dum. That shouldn't all be beamed together like this. Bum ba dum ba dum bum ba. That you shouldn't have all two beats beamed together. Bum ba dum should be beamed as one beat, and then so this eighth note in the middle, eighth, 16th, 16th, that 16th should then, it's written here as an eighth, but it should be written as a 16th tied to another 16th. So let me show you the difference there. And this is a, this is a thing you should know musically, and then you'll also get to see how to do it in MuseScore. So what they have is 8th, 16th, and I'll make them different pitches so we can tell which note is which. 8th, 16th, 8th, and then 16th, and then 8th. That's what they have written. And that's the rhythm. But the thing is that this makes it harder to read than necessary. If instead you turn that middle note there, so I'll keep that, but then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to show you MuseScore actually has a command to do this for you automatically. So I'm going to copy and then paste this over here. And if I go to Tools, Regroup Rhythms, I don't know if it knows how to fix this rhythm. No, it didn't. So it doesn't know, it doesn't deal with 16th notes, I think, only eighths. But it should be this. It should be E tied. And when you write this rhythm, it's the exact same rhythm. It's just written in a way that clarifies the beat. You can see where beat 2 is. Beat 2 happens where this E is tied over. So it happens within that E. And this gives you a place. Bum, boo, dum, ba, dum. And you know that that clap comes in while that E is happening. Where the way it was written originally, it's harder to know where beat 2 is. It's a lot easier to misread these rhythms and get lost in them. I point that out because pop music is generally going to be full of these sorts of rhythms, and they really flow very naturally when you're singing the lyrics, and yet when you try to read them, it can look very awkward if you don't notate it right. So it's definitely worth understanding how to write these the most readable way. So basically, when you have 16th notes, the rule is beam each beat together. That's a thing that I would say. The types of rhythms we have here, these syncopations, the fact that there's this note, I talked about syncopation when I was talking about ragtime a few weeks ago. When you have a note on an and that's not followed by a note on a beat. Here we have a note on the right? One E and It's a note on the not followed by one on the beat. That's another form of syncopation there. So these syncopations are going to be all over the place in here, and by writing them in the recognizable ways, it's going to make it much easier to read. We can not only can we just easily see where the beat is and tell where beat 2 is, but it looks more familiar if you're used to seeing printed music that's notated in traditional ways. Bump, eighth, 2/16 is a rhythm you've seen a million times. 2/16 and an eighth is a rhythm you've seen a million times. So now you got to do is play them one right after the other. Whereas this rhythm, eighth, 16th, eighth, 16th, eighth, is a rhythm you've probably never seen written out before, unless you read someone else's score that wasn't notated very well. I shouldn't say it's notated very well. It's just that was a thing that should be done differently about it. Okay, so anyhow, that's a notational thing. So rhythmically, the fact that it has those syncopations, that's one of the things that puts it in that genre. One of the so harmonically, it had that simple thing going on. Rhythmically, it has this nice complexity going on, and that's probably a good way of summarizing what's going on here. It's harmonically simple, rhythmically more complex. As a broad generalization, yeah, usually you pick one of those two. In order for music to be popular, something's gonna have to be simple about it, and something hopefully is complex enough to be interesting about it. So it could be sonically complex and just how all the sounds are layered together. It could be rhythmically complex, could be harmonically complex or melodically complex, but that's not a thing so much in most modern popular music. It's not about complex chord progressions so much. There are certainly people who specialize in that, but the people who like that I would know of that I would say, oh yeah, this person did interesting things with complex or relatively complex chord progressions and yet was popular. I would point to people like Steely Dan as examples of that, and not so much I'm not as aware of examples in the last 20 years or so where the harmonic complexity is the main thing. So my world, though, coming as a jazz musician, my world is popular music of, say, the 30s, 40s, 50s, and not by the 50s. I'm not even talking about, like, the early rock music of there. I'm talking about the songs that were popular in the 50s because they were done by Frank Sinatra or people like that could have been from the 40s. It just happened to be in the 50s, right? That music, sometimes we call it the Great American Songbook. This was popular music. You'd definitely turn on the radio and hear it any day of the week. You'd hear these songs, but these are the songs that jazz musicians tend to use as basis for improvisation because we love the chord progressions. The harmonies of that music are very much uh, the harmonies in that music lend themselves to improvisation. And so a lot of the songs that I particularly enjoy are going to be rhythmically much simpler than this. They're not going to have all these crazy syncopations in them, but harmonically more complex. And there's one of my very favorite songs about spring that I'm going to show you an arrangement. Well, I'll pick an arrangement. There's a whole bunch of these that I see here. This one looks like a lead sheet. So this song, "You Must Believe in Spring," Michel Legrand is a songwriter who I don't know how many people are familiar with Michel Legrand. I guess I would add. Oh yeah, Radiohead's definitely got some things going on. I'm not that familiar with their music, but that's one that I know a lot of my students gravitate towards, and I need to know their music better than I do. Um, so, uh, so Dave, I see you asking a question about the people who write it and their followers might not have a problem. If you're talking about reading the rhythms, I would say anyone who has learned to read music and has read music most of their life are accustomed to seeing rhythms written in particular ways, and going outside that is not going to work well. And I'm not aware of any genre in which writing that rhythm that way would be common. Okay, so Michel Legrand, I see one person, Sam, mentioning that, which of course doesn't surprise me. So Michel Legrand is one of these composers who was active until I don't know when he died, not that long ago. But anyhow, he had like songs in the 70s. Like the one I remember from the 70s, and I didn't know his name at the time, was the Windmills of Your Mind. And we used to make fun of it growing up because it was so repetitive. But it was clever. It took one motif and just did all sorts of crazy things. Y'all remember that song? Da 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 da. It's the same motif over and over again. I have since come to realize that that's Michel Legrand's stock in trade. I mean, that is what a lot of his songs have going. And this particular song, is it going to play the chord? I'm going to download this version so I can. Actually, I'm just going to play it. Why not? I'm going to run over to the piano because I can play this song. And so I will check my camera angle. Yeah, good enough. Okay. So this also has, that's our motif. You now know the entire song. Then right? So it's the same motif kind of transposed all over the place as he goes, and that's what he does. That's kind of his shtick. Now the lyrics to this, so it's about spring. The lyrics are written by the Bergmans, Marilyn and Alan Bergman, whose songwriting team, and they did a lot of lyrics for a lot of Michel Legrand songs, and they're great. They don't just work with his music, but they are great lyricists, and this one is one of these songs that captures something about spring for me, in a way that's sort of unique because it's talking about the hope and the promise of spring, in a way that has a sort of air of resignation to it, like, I'm not sure I really believe this. So, like, the words go, when lonely feelings chill the meadows of your mind, not windmills, but meadows in this case. Just think, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? Beneath the deepest snows, the secret of a rose is merely that it knows you must believe in spring. Right? So it's hopeful, and yet a little it has this poignancy to it, right? It's like I break up just thinking about it. Yeah, the last part. Then it goes on to, you must believe in love and trust it's on its way, just as a sleeping rose awaits the kiss of May. Right? So it's, you must believe in spring and love. It's it's hopeful. It's expressing something about spring that's hopeful, and yet there's also this wistfulness about it. Like, man, it's not that way right now, but I'm trying. I'm doing my best to have the faith. Right? Keep the faith about this. So to me, this is where the songs about spring are at their best, when they're not just saying, hey, it's spring, flowers are out, isn't it pretty, and everyone's happy. Yeah, songs like that are fine, but to me, this deeper, and now like getting a little deeper into spring is kind of, is definitely uh how would I put it? That's what to me makes these songs more interesting. I'm scrolling back up also to see Michelle died 2019. Yeah, I knew it wasn't that long ago. So thanks for looking that up for me. Um, yeah, I remembered that it wasn't that long ago. I didn't remember with that recently though. Sometimes my sense of time is all over the place. It's hard for me to keep things straight. So anyhow, those are just some observations. When I talk about songs about spring, though, like another one that's a totally different vibe, but also has a certain, like, I don't know, deeper quality. There's a song called "It Might As Well Be Spring." Maybe more of you might be familiar with that one. It's from probably some Broadway show, and it goes, I don't remember the words. I'm as happy as a something in a something. Da 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 da. I haven't seen a bluebell or a crocus or something. I forget what the words are, but it's talking about, and it isn't even spring. It's saying, man, I'm really happy. Things are really good, and man, it's not even spring yet. It's still winter, and I'm really happy. So there's something, this has a totally different vibe to it. And that song, so Michel Legrand's piece is really just 2-5-1 chord progressions over and over again. 2-5-1 transposed all over the place. So the melody transposes through, and then 2-5-1 again, right? So it's a very simple 2-5-1 chord progression moving all over the place. It Might As Well Be Spring has a lot of different stuff going on. It has tonicizations, key of G, then D minor 7. It's going to have 2, 5, 2, 1 in the key of C. So it has that tonicization, this movement to C. And then a circle of 5, circle of 5th chord progression. So it's this is the language of jazz musicians that we improvise over all the time. We know this language really well. And then in the bridge, the last A section. Minor 4 chord, my favorite chord in the entire world. Then another minor 4 chord if you want it. So it's got the harmonic language in there that's my language, right? I'm not saying I invented it. I'm saying that is my home. These 2-5-1 chord progressions, tonicizing other chords, using minor 4 chords, secondary dominants. I had that's a tritone substitution. All of that stuff. That's my language, harmony. So when I talk about in my my harmony and chord progressions course, that's the kind of stuff. I'm not focusing on that as a genre because it's realistically all language that comes from classical music, but the application of it then to that type of popular music as adapted by jazz musicians, you get like 3 different views of concepts that have been around since Bach, basically. So anyhow, my music, my own music, even when I'm writing pop song kind of music, I typically am leaning on that vocabulary a little bit. All right, so I somehow managed to, okay, there we go. Oh yeah, I'm sorry, I'm just skipping around. I'm not, I can play in time, you know that, but I'm just skipping around and talking about harmony. Um, yeah, those are some of my favorite spring songs. I've got others too. Probably next week I'm going to show you one that I wrote. That's another one of the darker ones. It's the darker side of You Must Believe in Spring. It's the flip side of that. I'll talk about that maybe next time and show you this arrangement that I made. But so I've seen that a couple people are starting to put some spring songs up, and this is great. I'm really happy to see that. By the way, I brought up this, and it's cool. Someone did a full entry of Appalachian Spring. Aaron Copeland, and it's it's the whole thing. And so this, it's about spring, but if you're writing instrumental music about spring, now we don't have lyrics. Now it's about telling certain stories about, sonic stories about what, in some more abstract sense, what does spring mean to you? And there's, huge tradition of that, Vivaldi Spring from Four Seasons, because Four Seasons. So there's, you can certainly write any kind of music about spring. Know this part? So anyhow, it's a pretty well known piece. So all right, so I see more questions about the enharmonic spellings of things, and I'll let's see, why is augmented fifth above B? So again, it's really important to know how to spell these things, and I cannot recommend highly enough studying this thing and studying these things. And if you do go back and check out, I recommend my basic music theory course. I really do. It answers these sorts of questions really well. But it's all about spelling. If you want to make an augmented fifth, B, you make yourself a B scale, and you better spell each letter because you want it to be B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp is the fifth. So B to F sharp is a perfect fifth. B to any kind of F is a fifth. If you want to talk about fifths starting from B, it's got to be spelled F. Otherwise, it's not a fifth. It's some other interval. So B to F sharp is a perfect fifth. B to F natural is a diminished fifth, one smaller, but still spelt with F. B to F sharp is a perfect fifth. If we want to make it an augmented fifth, we still have to spell it as a fifth. Still spell it with an F, but one bigger than F sharp is double sharp, is an augmented fifth. So this chord here, B, D sharp, F double sharp, would be the correct spelling of an F augmented triad. So again, to really understand this stuff, I can just really recommend studying either, whether it's my basic music theory course or anything else you find online. The answers are there. The answers are there, and when you read up on it, it makes a lot of sense, and it actually speaks back to that issue of writing the rhythms. When I talked about pattern recognition and the fact that when I wrote that one rhythm so funny, or I didn't write it funny, but it was written in a way that wasn't recognizable here, it's hard to recognize what's going on there because you can't see where beat 2 is, and it's not a familiar way of writing it. As soon as I rewrote it as beats were separated, it became easier for my brain to parse. I see, oh, here's beat 1, here's beat 2. I know where to clap. I know how to do this. I recognize that first beat, bum ba dum, and I recognize that second beat, ba da dum. And now I just have to put them next to each other, bum ba da dum, and then I have to put a tie, bum ba da dum, bum boo dum ba dum. See, I'm not even doing it right? Bum boo dum ba dum, bum boo dum ba dum. So that pattern recognition is what allows us to recognize things. Well, the same is true of spelling chords. And so here I'm going to tell a story. I did this. I did this performance once with a famous ensemble. I don't want to like talk about names because then you'll eventually Google and fill out who I'm talking about. But it was a well-known ensemble. They hired a well-known composer to. They commissioned someone to write a piece for this ensemble, and it was a drummer who did this, and they basically did it by entering the music into MIDI and transcribing it into the notation software. They cleaned some stuff up, but they didn't clean up the piano part very well, and so I ended up with a lot of this. All right, you heard what happened, right? You heard what that chord was? Let me play it for you. Look at that chord there, D, G flat, A. Now listen to it. That's a D major chord, right? Does it look like a D major chord to you? D, G flat, A. You got this big gap between the D and the G flat, and then that G flat and the A are kind of clustered next to each other, and one's on one side of the stem, one's on the other. That does not look like a triad. Bring me in 2 days before the performance and say, okay, you've got to sight read this music for dress rehearsal, and give me a whole lot of triads written like that to read. It is not going to go well. And that's what happened. So I had to sight read a whole lot of music that was written like that. And it was painful. Spelling counts. If you're going to spell a triad, it better look like a triad, or else what is it? You spell it correctly, though. D, F sharp, A, and now I can see, oh, it's that. My hand just goes there. I recognize that I can do that. And so it's very much about this. And so yeah, the same question about G double sharp. It's G double sharp. Go up one sharp, it's G sharp. Go up another sharp, it's the same button on the piano as A, but it is not A. It's two notes that sound alike, but they're different, and spelling counts. Spelling counts. Study up on the basic music theory, and you'll understand a little more about that. But spelling counts, and this is my best example I have from my real life of why spelling counts. The first one is practically unreadable. The second one is correct. Okay, so yeah, I want to take a look now at some of your music. So I'm going to go back to where I can sit and be comfortable, and do that. Ugh. So some of the music that has been submitted, I'm really happy to see some stuff coming in, and so Colleen, I know you said you wrote a song and you added it to the group, the Lilac Eyes, and here it is, and I haven't heard it yet, and so I'm looking forward to it. So this is a song, and so here come lyrics too. So great. So I'll hear the intro. Well, yeah, we'll just play through the whole thing and hear what we have. Wow. Wow, I'm really glad I didn't listen to that first because boy, that was so not anything I might have expected. I really like it. It's got a lot of interesting stuff. I mean, that the rhythmic things that are going on here at the beginning is right. This having these half note triplets against the eighth notes and quarter notes here. I mean, this already just has me kind of like in a little bit of a spin, loving the spin I'm in. That's another reference to that generation of music. Um, uh, yeah, so this pattern, this repeating pattern that's sort of moving through different chords as it moves along, right? We're in A flat. Different arpeggiations of the chord down in the left hand, different things, kind of implied harmonies. It's basically telling us about key of A flat without having to be real specific about chords. So it's this sort of wash of sound about that. And then now this wash of sound about an E flat kind of sound, a 5-chord kind of sound, and yet it doesn't sound like a traditional 1 chord and 5 chord, right? It's much more ambiguous than that, which is just a really cool thing. The ambiguity comes both from the the way the notes line up. I mean, if you look at that first measure and actually look at the intervals between the top part and the bottom part, we're not outlining the triad exactly. We have an F as our first note against this A flat, and you say, "Oh, are we in F minor?" But somehow, no. The fact that we keep repeating the A flat more, I hear A flat as our tonic, but that this melody is the top part is fourth, and that's the most ambiguous interval. That's actually something I should focus on. And Colleen, um, feel free to tell us anything else you want to tell us about this piece. I said don't change so often. Yeah, I don't even remember what my context was for it, but anyhow, it's really cool. So anyhow, this interval here, these fourths, one of the things that I was talking to my this I teach this basic musicianship course at a local university that I mentioned earlier, that I told them something else. But one of the things I was talking about today was trying to define what a triad is. Right? A triad isn't any old combination of three notes. It's a combination of three notes that are not a step apart. That is maybe the sort of simplest definition that I could give that had some historical legitimacy, that wasn't based on just saying how to build it. Well, you take a note and then you put either a major or minor third on top of it, and then you put either a major or minor third on top of that, and that's a triad. I don't know that that's a good definition of a triad. It's a good recipe for making a triad. If I want to define a triad and talk about where it came from, well, people had notes and they were like trying to find three notes that worked together that were consonant against each other. And if you're trying to make three notes consonant against each other, and you've got a C here, and you're like, well, what other notes are consonant above the C? All right, well, is D? No, that's a second. That's dissonant. Um, Above it, I can put an E. Let's think back to the time, like we're talking Renaissance here. Accidentals are barely a thing. You have a C and you have an E. All right, what could I put above that? F? No, that's dissonant above the E. G? Yeah, I can do that. All right, there's one. Great. What else could I do? Well, now you start trying other combinations, and you could go through a whole lot of possibilities and then realize you've only got one other choice. The only other choice that's completely consonant in Renaissance terms, anyhow, are these two, C, E, G, and C, E, A. And what they end up having in common uh, is they are combinations of three notes where all the intervals are consonant. Now, if you accept a perfect fourth as a consonant, which in the Renaissance you wouldn't have done, but you'd also get CFA as another possibility. And so I will add that to the list. Well, most of you might recognize that's a root position triad. That's a first inversion triad. That's a second inversion triad. Triads, root position, first inversion, and second inversion. I mean, these aren't inversions of the same triad, right? This is C major, that's A minor, that's F major. But that terminology didn't exist in the Renaissance, right? We were just talking intervals. We're trying to build combinations of intervals. So these combinations of notes were the only combinations of intervals, I should say, a third and a third, a third and a fourth, or maybe a fourth and a third, but probably not. Those are the only consonant combinations you will find. Any other combinations you put will have some dissonance in them somewhere. And so it'll either have a second or it's going to have a seventh between the outer voices. And if you do that, like if I try C, E, B, well, that B here is really a second away from the C, right? It's a second plus an octave. So why am I going on about this? Well, A, it's a little bit interesting to really think about, well, where did triads come from? But also, it puts this guy in a special position. I'll make it B flat so it can be perfect fourths. This is an interesting shape. It's two perfect fourths. It does have a second in it, right, between B flat and C. So it's a dissonant combination. But what's interesting about it is this combination here, because it's got two notes a third apart, they kind of assert themselves as being part of a triad. When we hear this combination, our brain is going to interpret that as a C major chord, probably, because we hear two of the three notes of a C major chord. This combination does not have two notes of a triad. It's about the only it's a way that you can put three notes together that don't in any way suggest even part of a triad. No two notes here come from a triad. So there's something especially ambiguous about this type of sound, perfect fourths stacked together like that. They don't even have to be perfect fourths. It could be an augmented fourth like that. So anyhow, if we look back at Colleen's piece here, that's what she's got, this really ambiguous stacks of perfect fourths happening in the right hand, but it's also rhythmically so ambiguous, these triplets happening against this flowing left hand. So it's really interesting. So can perfect intervals be diminished? Yeah, if you take a perfect interval and make it one smaller, it is then called diminished. So F to B flat is a perfect fourth. F to B double flat is a diminished fourth. Sounds like a third, but spelt differently. Realistically, that's not a thing. We don't use diminished fourth very often, but diminished fifths we use all the time. So F to G is a perfect fifth. F to G flat is a diminished fifth. That interval is a very commonly used interval in a lot of contexts. It's a tritone. It has very special qualities. Tritone is just another word for diminished fifth or augmented fourth. C. Sorry about that. Let me undo that. C. There we go. C to F sharp. C to G flat is a diminished fifth. C to F sharp is an augmented fourth. They sound the same. They're enharmonic, but they're spelt differently, and depending on the context, one of them's correct. If you're talking about a D7 chord, you need it to have an F sharp. If you're talking about an A flat 7 chord, you need it to have a G flat. When you're spelling the chord, these spellings matter. And so these are both enharmonic. They sound similar, but are spelt differently. So these intervals that have these diminished fifths or augmented fourths are also can have the same quality, like that version I had with the B natural there. Perfect fourth between C and F, augmented fourth between F and B, but still no thirds. So the thirds are the thing that make it sound like a triad, because the triads have thirds in them somewhere. So this piece manages to have this lovely ambiguity in that right hand harmonically, but also rhythmically, because it's like in a totally different time signature kind of thing. Hemiola is a term that was used. I would actually say that's not quite the right use of that term. It's polyrhythm is what I would call it. So yeah, there's this whole sort of mythology about the devil's interval and about tritones, and I'm not sure what that's based on, but I'm pretty sure it's greatly exaggerated, because tritones have been used for the since the Middle Ages. It's treated as a dissonance, and you resolve it. But yeah, I'm sure there's some context in which it was like looked down upon even more. But diminished fifths are actually quite nice intervals. You just resolve them appropriately. And I could load up any amount of Renaissance music to show examples of it. So So this idea that we're in 4 here and 3 there. So 4 against 3, right? It's as if we're in 3, right? We're subdividing this measure into basically 4 beats in the left hand, but subdividing it into 3 parts in the right hand. I would call that not a hemiola, but a polyrhythm. 4 against 3. 1, 2. I'm not very good at that. I'm not a drummer, and I suck. I can do 2 against 3 pretty well. 4 against 3 is a struggle for me. So that's a little hard for me to actually play, and I would have to practice that on the piano to make it sound even. I would practice to make sure those right hand triplets sounded really even and the left hand notes sounded really even, and figuring out how they fit. I remember my teacher giving me a thing for 2 against 3. Oh, what a fuss! 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 And that was how I learned 2 against 3. If she taught me one for 4 against 3, I don't remember it, and so that's why I can't do it. That's my excuse. So I can definitely do it. So yeah, I as far as questions about why B flat to C is a whole step, well, it's 2 half steps, and again, instead of asking really specific questions like this, I can urge you to sort of read from the beginning about how pitch naming works and how interval naming works and all this, because then these questions answer themselves. So I will just urge you to do that. But a whole step is 2 half steps. B flat to C, B flat to B is a half step, B to C is a half step. So B flat to C is a whole step. So that's the short answer, but again, the real answer is to read up more about the whole underpinnings of the whole, how these namings came about and all. Okay, so in Colleen's piece, we have this lovely ambiguity there. Since the term hemiola came up, I am going to talk about what that is, because it's something a little bit different. And it's actually worth talking about what a hemiola is. A hemiola will be if I have a piece in 4 and I write a rhythm that's in 4, say I write, right, this rhythm, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, that's a pretty clearly 4/4 kind of rhythm. Okay, maybe it's even 2/4. But if I write in my right hand, a 3-beat rhythm and repeat that, this is hemiola. The left hand is going bum, 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 something that's very duple. It's very 2-based or 4-based. But the right hand rhythm is 3-based, bum, boo-da, dum, bum, boo-da, dum. It's as if it's in 3/4, 1, 2, and 3, 1, 2, and 3. But it keeps crossing the bar line. That's maybe the best way to explain the difference. Hemiola is going to involve crossing the bar line. So the left hand alone, bum, 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 is accenting every 2 beats, but this is accenting dun, 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 is accenting every 3 beats. As a result, they keep shifting. The E shows up about the same time as the C the first time, but the second time it lines up with the G. And maybe instead of that, I'd be better off going ba, da, da, dum. Let me make this be it, because now it'll be even clearer. The first E lined up with a C. The second E lined up with the G. The third E lined up with an A. And the last E lined up with the B. So that pattern kept the right hand pattern started at a different place within the left hand pattern. That's hemiola. So it's something a little different from what Colleen has going on, which is what I would call polyrhythm. So yeah, it's a common area of confusion and totally worth talking about here. So I definitely appreciate that. So now the melody here, when this comes in, the Lilac Blue Eyes, is like, now it hits us with this whole like, oh, now we're going to hit these chords together after this whole floaty thing. Let's hear a few measures of floaty. So this is really cool, right? This is a sus chord, if we want to use that terminology. It's an A flat chord with a G flat triad above it. That sound, I remember learning in high school as a shorthand for writing a suspended chord. It's an A flat chord. The D flat within that chord is the fourth. So that's what we call a sus chord in the jazz or pop world, but fourths are typically used as part of suspensions in classical harmony, which is where that term comes from. That G flat is the seventh. The B flat down on the bottom, that's the ninth. So this is technically A flat 9 sus. And then it resolves to the A flat. So that sound is a good kind of pop kind of sound, that sus chord and resolving that way. And then I was sort of wondering at first, well, gee, are there going to be like chord symbols coming in? Is there meant to be a company? I really like the unaccompaniedness of this. So, Colleen, I don't know if you were planning on adding any additional um, I don't know if you were planning on adding additional harmonies here or additional background to it, but I kind of like how the everything stops there. But I think it could totally work either way. And the same story here. So this is actually the same thing harmonically as we had at the beginning, right? The beginning is an A flat kind of expanded over 8 bars, and then E flat expanded over 8 bars. Now we're getting kind of another version of it. Here's A flat over 4 bars. Then now flat expanded 4 bars. I'm curious, Colleen, if this is a typo here under in bar 17, 18, 19, 20, if you really meant I like it as opposed to the G flat that you had in the previous time. Right? One of them's G flat, one's G natural. I kind of like that, but then when you repeat the phrase in D flat, in E flat, you don't do it there, and you don't do it 4 bars later. Right now, you're back to the G flat. I kind of like the G natural, so if you did do it on purpose, I would approve. I would approve of it either way. But the G natural here, that's the illusion of a 5-to-1. It's a 5-to-1 over pedal point, right? The A flat is kind of this constant note underneath while we have the illusion of 5-to-1. Technically 7-to-1, right? G, B flat, D flat. There's no actual E flat, no actual 5 that happens in there, and yet my ear hears it as 5. I hear 7 as 5 because they're essentially the same chord. In any case, yeah, I'm fine with it either way. But yeah, so the G flat would give you the consistency. The G natural gives you that kind of 5-to-1 sound. But I would say the piece isn't about the 5-to-1 sound, even though it's got 5 chords in it, right? It doesn't have that really sort of traditional use of 5-to-1. So I don't think you would have needed the G natural. And yeah, I think G flat works just as well. And then these little breaks here is it's just really nice little melodic phrase, and the way it's sort of changing. Like the first time you had A flat was that pitch level from low G flat to high E flat. The next time, even the same chord is coming back, it's a different melody. It's the similar shape, but a different melody. So it's got a nice level of interest to it. I Yeah, I just like how this all fits together, and then ties it back up again with the thing from the beginning. I am curious though, if you call this a pop song type of song, is there a particular like a particular songwriter or singer or something that you might associate with it? So That's what I wonder, because if there's someone that I should be hearing in my head as a antecedent for this. By the way, also I see the question about the G flat scale, and I'd love it if someone would just spell the whole C flat scale so you can really see. Just type in the whole thing. Someone else do that, right? So that we see where the why the C flat happens, because I see the discussion around it, but I'd like to see someone just type in the whole scale to make it really clear why there's a C flat in it. Okay, so anyhow, really nice job with this, Colleen. I like that. So I also mentioned, and so I'm just going to encourage people to post stuff about spring over the next few weeks. Use it as an inspiration to do whatever you want. Next week, I'll show you a song that I had written several years ago, quite a few years ago actually, about spring, and show you my arrangement of it. But what I want to conclude with here, though, is showing you this totally other piece that uh was submitted by Bruce, and it's a really long piece, so I'm not going to play the whole thing right now. Uh, but what I want to do is, Bruce, I would love it if you've given a little bit of explanation about it here in the comments, because I saw you were here earlier, Bruce. I hope you still are. Um, uh, so I would love a little more explanation in terms of what's going on section by section here, because I'm going to just skip around a little bit. What I'll say this is, it's variations on Bruce's high school fight song, right? And it's a short melody that we get to hear at the beginning. All right, so the first thing I have to ask is, what that last phrase is totally ba-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. And you're calling this an F minor chord there, but it's not really, because I heard that flat. I heard that so I did I download this already? I think I downloaded it already, but I'll find out in a second. Um what I was going to say is, there's actually a flat six scale degree, which puts it in the territory of my favorite minor four chord. I guess I didn't download it already, but now I have. So and I'm doing this so that I can watch it without it scrolling, because I have a little more control over the scrolling this. So I'm talking about this measure right here, this C flat. This basically gives me that minor four chord sound. A flat minor, right? A flat, C flat. And here, getting back to all the questions about spelling, A flat, C. If you want to tell me about A flat minor, spell it that way: A flat, C flat, E flat, because then it'll look right to me. Don't call that a B, even though it sounds like one. Now, in this case, the bass is F, so yes, it's really not a minor four chord. It's a half diminished two chord. So this isn't actually F minor 7. It's F minor 7 flat 5, or F half diminished. In any case, I love the chord. But this passage, I feel like that exact passage. I mean, any two-bar fragment probably comes from other songs, but I feel like there's another song that has that. Volume's low. Well, it is marked piano. It'll get louder. Not to worry. But so that's what's going on. It's just obeying the dynamics. Sometimes what I do for these demonstrations, though, is just delete all the dynamics. Delete all dynamics, and then delete all hairpins. I do this for demonstration purposes, just to avoid that exact problem. So this is this kind of chorale style melody. But what we're going to find out here is that in this piece, then, what Bruce has done is create this whole chorale, vocal chorale arrangement based on that. And I haven't analyzed it yet to see how different it is, how much of this is actually rearranged versus just taking this and scoring it out for four voices. I'm trying to make a quick look at it, and it looks like there's more going on than that. It looks like it's not just a literal translation of this, but it's hard to tell at short notice about that. So this is that same passage that I was just listening to. And when I look at that passage, it's definitely different. The chords are different because we don't have the C flat. Right? So he definitely made at least that one change. And there's others too, because this one has a diminished chord in here. Or it's actually a G7 chord. This time that C flat should have been spelled B natural, I think, because this is basically a G chord. Yeah, this is basically a G major chord. I would have spelt that with a B. So yeah, all these things interrelate. Anyhow, so now check out what comes next. Whoa, what happened to my sound? Oh, nuts. I can barely hear it, and why is that? I have no idea why. Oh, because of these guys. I need to delete these things too. Why? I thought I deleted all of the hairpins, but apparently I didn't. Did y'all see this coming? Right? So it's got that. And then, the horns enter. And so, let me skip ahead. Ready for the trombone? Right? All this stuff. Now we have the march section, and there's all this stuff going on here. So it's got these different sections that are all, hopefully in some way, I don't know, hopefully, I assume are all based on that original in some way. Now a different section. It's like all these different genres, different things going on, and so each one of these could be I'd want to look at individually and maybe pick a section, one section one week and another section another week, and sort of look at little bits of this, but also just look at how it was all put together, and does this I'm guessing this has some bearing on your high school experience, that these were all different genres that you worked within in the context, and I see it going back to again. Oh, nice. I need to get those guitars in there. Yeah, it's got that kind of klezmer-y sound going on there. So yeah, it's got all this really cool stuff that I really look forward to diving into more. Now we have the whole other thing going on. All right. Now we've got this vibe going on, right? So yeah, it's so cool. I only listened to it before, so I hadn't even heard all the sections. I missed that one entirely. Oh, nice. There's all sorts of really cool stuff that's going on in here that I just really look forward to digging in. So I love it, Bruce. If you would write up a little tour for us, so that we know what we're hearing. Key changes. Yeah, I mean, there's just so much going on in this piece. And we got another section here. coming back to that chorale type of texture that we started with, but more going on, nothing wise and stuff. I'm not even sure if it's the melody. I think it is. Whoa, yeah, all sorts of interesting stuff going on. Love it. So, and the big top. So it's just little circus music for you, right? So it's yeah, it's just really this sort of an amazing journey through a lot of different things, and I want to know more about the journey. Oops, I thought I clicked, but I apparently didn't. The theme returns. So this is the fight song now on top of that circus thing. Yeah. Someone mentioned Hooked on Classics. Y'all remember that? That was like a thing in the like what 70s, 80s, where someone like took all these classical themes and then put them like to this sort of disco beat. And what's sort of interesting about that is the pulse stayed the same throughout. That disco beat never changed, and they just put these different orchestrations on top of it. Here we actually have a lot more change stylistically, but it has that same kind of collage, mishmash, pastiche. There's lots of different words that we could use for how these pieces are being combined. And so it has a similar vibe to it that those Hooked on Classics. All right. So I would love it if this piece ever gets performed, to actually hear this performed by a real ensemble and see all those changes navigated. But yeah, so I think in future weeks, I'm just going to pick individual sections and look at them in more detail. But yeah, because this is just really this really kind of amazing tour through a lot of different stuff. And so Bruce, yeah, if you help me out by helping me with the tour, helping me understand what the different sections relate to each other, so I can just have that context provided for me already, and then I just drill in a little deeper. That's what I'm looking forward to. So keep thinking about spring. Spring is good. You must believe in spring. You must believe in spring and love. That is the motto of the month. So with that, I'm going to play my theme out so that we can get on with our lovely spring day, those of us who are enjoying one. I hope you've enjoyed this music masterclass, the special April Fool's edition. Not that I did anything foolish, I don't think. But the April Fool's Day, April 1st edition of the music masterclass, what we do every week. Be sure to check out at the top of the chat where I pinned the link to my site. If nothing else, be sure to enroll in this music masterclass. It's free, but that's how you make sure you get the email. If anyone's getting here, we didn't get an email specifically with this link, and because you're not enrolled, do that. And check out the other courses, my harmony course. I've been talking a lot about harmony here, right? And the language that I'm talking about harmony, is all about where my harmony course is. The language that I talked about when we had all these questions about spelling of scales, spelling about chords, spelling of enharmonic spelling, that's all in the basic theory course. So this information is all out there, and I'm putting it out there for you, and would love it if people who have questions about this just maybe sign up and study up on this stuff. I got to give myself a dramatic ending to finish, right? So I hope everyone's having a great day, and we'll see you next time.